save most of what I have for when we actually are going. I think
Also, the Lions stink.
the Lions
The Lions stink.
did they lose? Are they losing?
No, the game's on right now. I have it on
Oh.
my TV, and it's just every like both teams are just scoring like it's no tomorrow. I'm saying the Lions stink as preparation for next week when I'll actually probably melt in my chair.
Isn't it's for the division next week, isn't it?
Yep,
Ooh, that's gonna be good.
in Detroit.
In Detroit, man, that's basically
Every Vikings Lions game the last like 2-3 years has been like nail biters.
yeah. And isn't that too? It's like winner gets a bye.
Winner
And
gets the bye, and then the loser is the 5 seed, which would probably play I think Tampa at this point, which I don't like. I
yeah,
don't want to
that's
go to
no,
like
that's bad.
Tampa's they might be 8 and whatever or 9-7 or whatever, but that team they terrify me. Just I don't know what it like their offense
Yeah, they're
just
just
is
like
terrifying.
really scrappy. You don't know if they're gonna pop off for like 35 or
Right,
just just kind of melt.
right. Like their defense stinks, but Bucky, Mike Evans, Baker's playing the best ball of his life.
Yeah, yeah.
But like if you look at like the 5 through 7, it's Detroit, Green Bay, and Washington. Like all teams with like 11 wins. It's crazy.
NFC North powerhouse, except the Bears. Well, all right, you ready to do this thing?
Yep.
All right. What's going on, everyone? Jackson here from Vendetta Sports Media, back once again, another episode, quarters in session. As always, if you guys enjoy watching the podcast or
Is
listening,
it
wherever you
recording?
listen, yes, it is. I'm recording it. Just
Oh,
okay.
sorry.
So no,
I
you're good. You're good. So what I do is because it's a pain to try to download it from StreamYard, I just have OBS running.
okay. All
And it
right.
is
Sorry. My
currently
bad. My
recording.
bad. I
No, you're
interrupted you.
good. You're good. We'll just continue to roll on, man. So anyway, that is Matt, as you all know him very well. Of course, one of our lead, probably the lead guy here, the NBA at Vendetta Sports Media. Matt, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. I'm sorry I completely just
It's
interrupted your
okay.
intro because I didn't see the recording thing on StreamYard. So I was like, wait,
No, it's
is it
okay.
recording?
No,
Okay.
you're
All
good.
right. No, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. I finally today got to enjoy my Christmas break. Had a lot of traveling to do once finals wrapped up. Lots of grading to get done. I have just a tiny bit more grading to finish up. Last few grades to put in. It's my bigger class. It's my college level class. So it's taking me a lot longer to get it. I actually couldn't get my tests back until today. A little bit of drama behind that because I went up to the school one day and couldn't find my tests anywhere. And it took me like 2 days to figure out where my tests went. Uh, why that happened? No idea. But anyway, I'm living the dream, as always. Um, Enjoying sports. It's like one of the best times for sports right now. NFL playoffs around the corner. You and I were just chatting about that right before we started. Your Vikings looking solid and dangerous. Uh, so happy for you from a guy whose team could be in the playoffs, but is just kind of indifferent about it because Miami Greer don't like him, needs to go away.
It's
Um,
been a tough year.
it's been a tough year, and then of course there's NBA action going on even as we speak. Right now, the Pelicans are up on the Clippers, which is very surprising. Pelicans 5-27, kind of a very down year. Pelicans on Cooper Flag watch. Cooper Flag and Zion teaming up in New Orleans, eating that gumbo. And then the Nuggets and the Jazz playing tonight. Shout out Denver. I am actually rocking my Jokic jersey right now. Try to get a jersey of all the players I like, even if they're non-Memphis players. Although there are two jerseys that I want to buy by the end of the year for Memphis. One is a Jaren Jackson Jr. It's the Sounds throwback that they have, and then there's a Desmond Bain white Vancouver throwback. That would be awesome. I'd love it as a jersey, honestly, too, but I'm broke, and for the price of two jerseys, it's still cheaper than buying one jersey. I could buy three
Right.
jerseys, four jerseys maybe, for the price of a jersey. And then it's like, well, again, I have something a bit more practical because it's a t shirt and it's a bit more socially acceptable to wear outside of sports. Anyway, long tangent, finally done. We'll get into kind of the meat of this episode. So, as many of the listeners may know, Matt, aka the Diamond, is a massive Miami Heat fan, and there has been some drama going on with the Miami Heat. Supposedly, reportedly, Jimmy Butler potentially wanting out, then Pat Riley coming out and shutting that down in the most Pat Riley way possible. He still moves like a Colombian drug dealer down there in Miami. Just the white Scarface. Um, I was looking earlier. They're in the hunt for the playoffs. They're sitting at the 7th seed right now, so they're kind of on the upper echelon, upper end of a play-in team right now. By the way, very entertaining fight the other night with the Rockets. Multiple players getting suspended. Tyler Hero getting judo flipped and thrown about 5 feet. Hey, listen, we were talking about ratings before the podcast too. Give us some more of that. Give us some more like Malice in the Palaces. That'll definitely put butts in the seat. But Matt, I want you to just kind of talk a little bit about, explain to me, walk me through kind of this first third of the season with Miami, your thoughts, your feelings, and surrounding the Jimmy Butler situation and how the organization is poised to move forward.
Well, one, the fight was awesome.
Yeah.
Tyler may have gotten thrown like a rag doll. But listen, man, Heat fans have shit on this guy so many times this year. But Terry Rozier, way to have your teammates back, man.
Yeah,
Way to have your teammates back. Like
always.
first one in the scuffle, man. Like he was the gonna be the sideline out of bounds like passer. And so he was like right there already.
Mhm.
And so as soon as he saw men do that, he just started wailing on him. And no, it was just like a fun, exciting moment for the end of the game. But the season in and of itself hasn't been that much fun. I would say 16 and 14 right now. They were top 10 in offense just a couple of days ago, but they're now 14th. They've been kind of like a fringe top 10 defense this season. They've kind of been consistently inconsistent. You know, there was the moment where, Spoelstra calls the timeout when they don't have any.
Yeah.
They blow this massive lead against this 25-point lead against Orlando. They score 8 points in the fourth quarter, which is just completely unheard of in today's day and age. Against an Orlando team, by the way, that was without Mo Wagner, who
Yeah.
got hurt during the game. Um, Obviously, without Paulo and Franz Wagner, they were without Jalen Suggs. Like they were down everyone pretty
Yeah.
much, and they still found a way to win that game. Um, then like on the other side of it, they played the Lakers and they beat them by like, I don't know, like 75, 80 points. At home, the Lakers didn't even try literally the entire game. Like it was one of those, like it was one of the craziest games I've seen in the sense that Miami was 20th in offense heading into that game. I don't remember what exact game it was, so I don't know what the sample was looking like. It was like somewhere in like the 20s. But they were 20th in offense heading into that game, and they leaped 8 spots just by one game. Like it was crazy how efficient they were. But from just an overall season aspect, it hasn't been all that enjoyable. I think the biggest, I guess, positive side of thing, like Tyler Hero, like again,
Yeah.
he got thrown like a rag doll, but he's been their best player this year, and that's something that if you told Heat fans last year, like you know, they would have probably brought pitchforks to your house or something. Like Heat fans last year and throughout the last 5 years just have not liked Tyler Hero. Really, they've wanted him gone ever since he was a rookie. And now that he's become this all-star player, averaging 24 a game on incredible efficiency. He completely changed his shot diet heading into this season. He's on track to become the first like 24 point per game Heat scorer since LeBron, which is kind of crazy to think about just because in like today's modern day in basketball, like
Yeah.
a 25 point per game scorer isn't uncommon or isn't as uncommon as it used to be. And the fact that a team hasn't had a 25 point per game scorer in over a decade, like it's always been like Bam, Jimmy, and Tyler, but they've always kind of been around, 20, 21, 22 points. Like there's never been a 25 point per game guy. And so, I mean, that obviously is cool in and of itself. He's kept him in so many games. He's won them several games just based on his shot making. He's taking more threes. He eliminated the long twos from his shot diet. He's stronger than he was this year. Like he's gotten stronger every year, but I think this is the first year where you're really seeing it on a night to night basis. He's faster than he was. The way he's able to get to the rim against like these bigger, longer, stronger defenders is just so much more like efficient, and it looks so much easier to him than it did, even last year. Um, so it's been good in that respect. Obviously, they're young guys. Jovic, Jaquez, like they have not taken leaps yet. And I say this all the time, and people want to kill me for it, but growth isn't always linear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's just not how it is. And I mean, if you ask a Heat fan about Jaime Jaquez, they have him in 3 different trade proposals by the time I even finish that sentence.
I've seen the
Like it's just,
tweets. I've seen the tweets.
yeah. It's just like, what are we doing here, man?
That DeMar DeRozan one was nasty work.
Oh,
That someone.
fucking every DeMar DeRozan trade proposals, nasty word. Um, the whole Jimmy thing is just it's gotten to a point where it's just like I'm ready for February 7th once the trade deadline's over. I mean,
Mhm.
I know Pat already said he wasn't going to go out and trade him. That doesn't necessarily mean that he won't trade him if some godlike offer comes across his desk, which
Yeah.
based on the indications and all the reporting, that hasn't been the case. Like they haven't even received an offer per multiple reports.
Yeah.
And obviously we're still, a month and some change out from the trade deadline, but it's gotten to a point where it's like I'm just waiting to see what February 7th is like, regardless if he's traded or not. I just want to see what the team looks like, because if they're not going to trade him, uh, I'm very interested to see what their deadline approach is because Terry's significantly underperformed. Your young players have underperformed. Like really, Tyler's like the one bright spot that you have this year. Um, Kevin Love hasn't been as good. Like Duncan is fine. Alec Brooks has been awesome off the bench, even though he's Alec Brooks and he's 60 years old. Like you don't have much that you can trade away for legitimate value, and so that's
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, like, is there a conceivable way to improve the team, even if you're just improving around the fringes, like, or is it? I don't know if you're trading for like a big fish or someone like that, or if you're trade because it's like so many people want to just trade draft capital to get like the next big guy. And it's just like, well, is that going to actually change the trajectory of your franchise?
Yeah.
And that goes for every organization. Like, is that guy actually going to change it? And if the answer is no, then why would you do it?
Yeah.
And in this case, they've been mediocre for 3 years now going on in the regular season. I know they had that godlike run 2 years ago in the playoffs, but it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
can you expect that again? Can you expect your entire team to overperform in the playoffs, including your best player, when he's now 2 years older and has significantly more injuries than he did at that time? Like, no, that's just not a
Yeah.
realistic, pragmatic outcome. If it happens again, sick. If it doesn't, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna like I'm not gonna like I'm not gonna say, oh man, like I'm not gonna be disappointed or anything like that.
Yeah. That
Um,
that was kind of the direction that I was wanting like to go to because when you look at this team, there's some youth that's there to build around. Tyler Hero is obviously, as you've said, been the bright spot for them this season.
he's been
Um,
incredible.
but what is the direction of the team? That's like kind of like the big question that I think about for them moving forward because the reason why they had those 2 immaculate runs was Jimmy Butler. Yes, the other players did step up and perform, but this was a crazy stat that I saw in all of Miami Heat history. Jimmy Butler has 7 of the top 10 Miami Heat player playoff performances. This is including 4 years of peak LeBron.
Yep.
Without a doubt, the best player on the planet and probably the best he's ever played in his entire career,
Right.
which is saying something.
Right.
And Dwayne Wade, 15 years. Bosch for some years also. I know he kind of got pushed to the friends. He was number 3 of the big 3, but an excellent player in his own right. Shaq was still doing stuff there too. But anyway, just think of all the great Miami Heat players in the history of that team. And Jimmy Butler has 7 of them. Some of them in closeout games.
Right.
Too. Like, what was it? Games 4 and 5 in the against the Bucks in the bubble. Yep. He had it was like a 50 and a 40. He scored almost 100 points in 2 games.
Yeah, I want to say it was like a couple 40-pointers.
Yeah.
Because the 50-pointer he had was, I'm sorry, 2 years ago. Yeah, I was thinking. Yeah, not the bubble. 2 years ago.
Not the bubble, but 2 years ago. Yeah, but yeah. Either way, just the bubble run and then run 2 years ago. Jimmy absolutely carried this team, and then of course we have the picture of him at the bubble where he's laid up against the side because the man was literally doing everything. He was playing all 48 minutes, and it felt like then some.
I mean, he had that game 6 against Boston in 22 where it was, I don't remember exactly how many rebounds and assists he had, but he had 47. Like it was a game where he got injured during that series because Peyton Pritchard ripped his leg out from under him. He was terrible games 4 and 5, couldn't have been worse. And then all of a sudden, game 6, he comes out and scores 42 or 47.
Sorry, my wife has dropped me off.
You're good, man.
A care package of food for me. I'm gonna keep it I'm gonna keep it over to the side because they're not sponsored. No free sponsorships. No free sponsorships here.
But
Sorry.
yeah, no, it was he had 47 against in Boston on the road, and it was kind of reminiscent of LeBron when he had 45 and 15 against Boston in Game 6 in 2012. Not maybe different circumstances, sure, but it was still a huge game. I know they came short of making the finals. But.
Yeah, and just my thought process behind this is that the East is a little bit more competitive. It's still not as good as the Western Conference, but the East is more competitive. And like you've said, they've been mediocre in the regular season the past 3 or so years.
Yeah.
And sure, maybe in Pat Riley's mind, he's just thinking, get to the playoffs, get everyone healthy. You have your 7-man rotation, and you just run with it. But that worked 2 years ago, but it's probably not going to work now. There's a lot of mileage on Jimmy Butler. Now, you had players even like Kevin Love, who played decent minutes 2 years ago. Is he doing it? I'll be honest, I haven't really watched any Heat games.
He's a shell of himself this year.
Exactly. Exactly.
Last year he was really good. This year he's dealt with some personal reasons. Like he's been out for personal reasons multiple times this year. But when he's been on the court, he's been a disaster. He looks like he's 37, 38, 39. Like he looks like he looks like a shell of himself.
I mean, and again, I don't know if it's just like a pride thing where Pat Riley doesn't like it when things leak out of the organization. I know going back to the LeBron era, I think Pat Riley did not like LeBron. I think he had LeBron in Miami because winning came with LeBron, and that's going to 4 titles and winning 2 of them in 4 years is a crazy feat. But, I think Pat Riley was fine with LeBron leaving because, there was all the rumors that he wanted Eric Spoelstra fired, and that was Pat Riley's guy. He was not going to let LeBron dictate anything. That's just not the way, again, that this Colombian drug lord is going to run this organization. And So again, I don't know if it's like just like a pride thing where he doesn't like that got public, and I know kind of like Jimmy's agent and Shams were like kind of went back and forth. You know, Shams isn't afraid to defend himself in public on a massive platform, and it wasn't even on Twitter. It was on ESPN where he just comes out and says like, this is one of the most reliable stories that I've ever put out there. I'm never going to put out a story if I cannot confirm it.
Right.
And I'm gonna believe Shams because
Right.
he's Shams, however you say his name. But he needs Pat Riley at least needs to look at shopping some of these guys. And you when other teams like sense that you're kind of down and that a potential rebuild is on the horizon, you're never going to get the value that you think that Jimmy Butler or even someone like Bam could get you if you wanted to try that. You could try to offload Jimmy and you keep everyone else, keep your young core together. That would probably be my way of doing it if I was Pat Riley. I would at least shop around because you never know. You never know
Right.
what could
Yep.
land in your lap. And first round picks these days are a lot more valuable. It's why, and we'll talk about it in a little bit too when we talk about Memphis and kind of like the Dorian Finney-Smith trade falling apart. Kind of one of the big kickers was Memphis had a heavily protected first round pick in this upcoming draft, and it's because Zach Kleiman understands the value of a first round pick in the modern NBA with how the collective bargaining agreement or the CBA is set up. You don't want to part away from those first round picks. So he may not get the value that you want out of Jimmy Butler, but if someone is willing to offer you something, if there's a team out there that once you get closer to the deadline is looking for someone like a Jimmy Butler, maybe not the 20 something points a game production Jimmy Butler, but just like the leadership aspect, give you some few points, just another person out there on the court for the other team to kind of have to keep an eye on and make him hesitate a little bit here and there because Jimmy still can play, obviously. I feel like you have to listen to those offers and maybe even start exploring them. Maybe you look
Yep.
in the East and Western Conference and you look at some of those teams that are kind of on the fringe and have some assets and give them a call up and say, let's try to work something out for Jimmy when you get closer into February. I at least think he should look into that because the longer you hold on to an asset like Jimmy Butler, the value is going to continue to tick downwards. And if you're going to be stuck in mediocrity, you might as well just get rid of him and then get what you can and reload and clear that cap space. Maybe you can attract someone in free agency. I don't know. But really, the draft picks, the draft assets are what you want. And whatever you can get for them, the NBA is so talented now, and there's so much talent that's coming out. I mean, like again, to bring up the Grizzlies, Jalen Wells is playing like an
Yeah.
He's
been awesome.
He's playing like an all defensive player, and he was picked
Yeah.
in the 40s, late 40s
Yeah.
in the draft. You can find talent in the second round. So even if you're getting like multiple second round picks, and I trust an organization like the Heat, I trust Eric Spoelstra to develop talent. Let the organization do their thing. Sell on Jimmy Butler. You still have Tyler Hero. You still have Bam Adebayo. Maybe sell anything else that you can, but build around your young core and try to do something there. Like kind of like a soft reboot, and maybe in 2 years you've got something.
See, that's the issue because this has been an organization that doesn't value second round picks.
That's a shame. That's a shame.
It is. They traded 3 second, like just to give you some perspective here. They traded 3 second round picks for a guy named KZ Okpala in the Bull draft. KZ was out of the league in like 3 years. Like they only have 2 second round picks. Technically, they still own one of them because it just became eligible. Their 2031 pick, which they swapped it in the Thomas Bryant trade that they had a couple of weeks ago. It was a 2031 swap. And then the only other second rounder they own currently holstered is the 2026 second round pick that they got from the Lakers. But they traded, I think, 2 second round picks to get off Oladipo's contract. They traded 1 second round pick to get off of Myers Leonard after that whole debacle happened where he, did some bad guy stuff on Call of Duty and what, like, Like this has been a team that it's weird to me because I've always said it like I would rather them it obviously like you don't do a trade just to do a trade, but if you can get some kind of value back, whether that be a second round pick, and you're an organization like the Heat that is so successful at getting undrafted guys, why can't you do the same with second round picks?
Yeah.
Like lean into that just a little bit more. If you again, it obviously it has to be the right deal, but yeah, lean into it if you can. But going back to Jimmy, like that was why it came out that they were listening to offers for Jimmy Butler. Like they're
Yeah.
doing their due diligence because he said in the summertime that he was going to opt out of his deal this next year since he wasn't getting the extension.
Hmm.
And the extension at the time would have tacked on one additional year. Now, at this point, if he waits to the off season, it's 3 years. So it's much longer. I don't know. Again, there's conflicting reporting about like whether he wants the max or whether he'll get the max or whether he like the thing with the Heat though is they're okay with waiting. Like they're
Hmm.
okay with being like, okay, there's only really one team this summer that will have cap space or at least max cap space, and that's Brooklyn. Well, do you think Jimmy Butler is going to go to a rebuilding Nets team? I don't. And I think the Heat think the same thing, but you never know because the Heat were an organization once upon a time that acquired Jimmy Butler without cap space.
Hmm.
They got him in a 4 team sign-in trade because they're crazy psychopaths and they were able to configure that. They have the best
Yeah.
cap guy in the league in Andy Ellisberg. Like that they made that happen once upon a time. And who's to say a team like I'm just going to throw them out there. I don't know exactly what their cap situation looks like next year, but Golden State. What if Golden State's like, yeah, we'll acquire Jimmy Butler via sign and trade. We'll hard cap ourselves for a year, but we get Jimmy Butler in the building with Draymond, with Steph. Let's see what happens. That can very easily, not very easily, but that isn't something that should be completely ruled
Yeah.
out. And so when you are waiting like the Heat and you are saying no to some of these trade offers, if you're going to get any between now and February 6th, then that's that's the kind of game that you're playing. You're playing with fire a little bit. You're banking on the market being the market and the market saying, well, we're not going to sign this 36-year-old guy to a max extension, a 3-year max, because that's what he's eligible to make. Like, we're not going to do that. And so he'll come like that's the game that they're playing right now. And like to some extent, I understand it. I completely understand. You don't want to trade again. Trading just to trade isn't a good idea,
Yeah.
but if you get the right offer, sure. But I wonder if I don't know why it was weird because they don't usually release statements about really anything. Like Pat talks to the media once a year. Like
Yeah.
he, he does they don't release statements on that kind of stuff. And the fact that he came out, a month and a half before the deadline, being like, yeah, we're not going to trade him. It's just like, what if again, not saying this is completely possible, but like, what if a team like Golden State or Dallas or like they just come knocking, they come
Hmm.
kick the door down and they give you some godlike offer? I'm not saying that will happen. I never thought a godlike offer was going to happen because he was going to opt out. What team would want to trade an arm and a leg for Jimmy
Yeah.
Butler when he's going to opt out anyway? Um, but as that organization, you would have to make sure that he would be able to re-sign there to be, a contending team that where he wants to be with some structure, and you retain his bird rights.
Yeah.
And that's what a team that would trade for him have.
Yeah.
Um, and so you'd have to have that assurance, sure,
Hmm.
which is why I think the reports did come out about a couple of teams that he did like. I don't know if that was Bernie Lee, his agent.
Hmm.
I don't think that was the Heat front office. It had to have been executives around the league who were just like, they heard someone, they heard something from someone.
Yeah.
And they probably told Shams, and that's probably how it got out. And Bernie
Mm.
was probably pissed whether Bernie was a part of that or not.
Yeah.
Um, but it's one of those things where it's like it just feels weird to me why you come out and say that you're not going to trade him when we know there's a non-zero chance that you could potentially trade him. And teams all the time, in different sports are like, oh yeah, we're not going to trade this guy, and then again a month later or something, someone kicks the door down with some crazy good offer because they really want someone, and oh boom, now that person's gone.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like that happens plenty of times in sports. The optics of the organization that is trading said player, it's always bad unless if it's a really good trade. Um, but
Yeah.
the Heat don't. necessarily care about it optically. I don't. At least I don't think they do. Like I don't like it. They've dealt with plenty of knuckleheads and crazy optics before. It's not like they wouldn't be afraid to do it again. Like that's just not that's just not who they are. Um, but it feels really weird the timing of it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they're gonna do their due diligence. But I do think they're gonna wait, and they're okay with that,
Yeah.
and that's fine. Like
Yeah.
I get that from an organizational perspective. Um, but again, that goes back to my original point. If you're not going to trade him, then what are you going to do? Because I don't think the same roster can be together to some extent past the deadline. Are you going to trade Terry, who has one more year left on his deal? Are you going to trade Jay Rich? Are you going to try to dump him for upset? I mean, he's a negative asset, so I don't think they'd be able to get off him anyway. Alec Burks, are you going to like Duncan has an early termination option next year for 19 million, roughly 20 million. Are they going to trade him? Because he's going to be on the last year of his deal. Like, I don't know what exactly their plan would be if they're not trading Jimmy.
Yeah.
But I think to me it feels like they may shuffle some deck chairs here and there. They may do a couple things here and there, but it's nothing going to be it's going to be nothing seismic. But then I think they're going to wait until the off season, once Jimmy is a free agent, once you figure out what you're going to do with Duncan, once you figure out what you're going to do with Terry, who's going to be making 25 million next year. Like, I think that's the plan that they're probably going to go with. But I have no idea. This team never makes trades, so hard for me to believe they're going to actually trade someone between now and next month or February.
Yeah.
By the time this comes out.
Well, speaking of trades, or I guess trades that didn't go through or fell through, or someone swooped in, the Memphis Grizzlies. It's time for our regularly scheduled Grizz talk, and we're gonna start. It's kind of been a bad week for the Grizzlies.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it came out in this, and I mean, it wasn't just like guys that it's like, oh yeah, they're like a second or third tier reporter for big publications, but it's not like the guys. No,
Right.
like Mark Stein was reporting on this too, that the Grizzlies basically had a deal in place with the Nets for Dorian Finney-Smith. Now,
Right.
Dorian Finney-Smith is a little old. I think he's on the last year of his deal.
Player option.
Player option. Okay, well, there you go. And the deal reportedly, was Luke Kennard, John Conchar, and a protected first-round pick for Dorian Finney-Smith and a second-round pick, or it said second-round compensation, or whatever that means. From what I think, according to Mark Stein said, the hiccup was John Conchar's contract. For some reason, they didn't want to be held entirely for John Conchar's contract, which is odd because John Conchar, after this season, is 3 years, $18 million. That's not a lot.
Right.
In the grand scheme of things. There are guys that play less than John Conchar that make more money than him. And Conchar has found himself deeper on the bench as players like Jake LaRavia have taken a step up, and as guys are coming off of injury now and or are exceeding expectations. And the Lakers swooped in with D'Angelo Russell, which I guess makes sense when you trade away Schroeder. You got your point guard back, I guess. And 3 second-round picks. So I guess the Nets thinking there, oh well, it's 3 second-round picks. Maybe they're valuing second-round picks more as they realize that a rebuild is on the horizon. The more picks you have, the more chances you have of finding somebody deep in a draft. I mean, like we just said, NBA drafts these days are getting incredibly deep. There's guys that would be first-round talents, 10, 15 years ago in a draft that are deep in the second round. So again, I am greatly value second-round picks, and there's a lot of other teams in the league that do. So it was a little disappointing as a Grizz fan. I was excited to see the Grizzlies try to finally make the move. Was waiting for that tweet to come through, and then the Shams tweet comes out where he goes to the Lakers, and it was just incredibly deflating. I won't lie. Now the Cam Johnson dream is still alive. You know, Brooklyn can't hold on to everybody. Cam Johnson, hey, same offer. Cam Johnson, let's maybe take a little of those protections away. I don't know, but it would have been a fantastic move for Memphis. It's really kind of put Zach Kleiman, Grizzlies GM, under the radar, where a lot of fans are sick and tired of him. And it kind of boils on into kind of this next part of where the Grizzlies are injured yet again. It has happened once again. You know, and this is why the preseason, I remember us kind of talking about when we did some of our previews, like the Grizzlies preview. And like me talking with like Trey in the first episode for this NBA season, and just like casual conversation in the Slack where everyone was like having the Grizzlies like 4, 5, 6, or even a fringe play-in team, you know. And I said to everyone, I said, if this team can stay healthy, it's a 2 seed. Guess what? They've been relatively healthy all year, and they are currently the 2 seed in the West. They just lost to OKC by almost 30, but you know, Shea was picking on Yuki, so that's kind of unfair. Kind of a douche move there, Shea. Guys, you know, 5'6", you know, gosh, you know, but it's just, and that's what's so upsetting as a Grizzlies fan is for different points in time, there's only been a few guys injured. It's been Gigi, it's been Vince. Like, they've been injured for most of the year. They're struggling to come back. Edie missed some time too, but for the most part, those were the only 3 guys on the injury report. It was incredibly short, and I was so happy to see it. And just the play was phenomenal. They were really hitting their stride. They won in Boston for the first time. I think it was since 2015, 2016. Beat the defending champs, which, by the way, we talked about this, and I'll just kind of shoot it here. The big reason why the Grizzlies won that game was because the Celtics shot 18 of 60 from 3, 6-0. They shot 60 3-pointers, which is nuts. You mean to tell me that, like, you can't even shave off 10 of those shots and try to drive to the lane or make an extra pass and try to get a better shot? Anyway, but it's incredibly disappointing yet again, because January is the ringer for Memphis. Let me see if I can switch over to them real quickly here and just kind of talk about the schedule coming up for them. I'm looking at it right now, and I mean, just like beautiful wins. Some of them lower level teams, some of them like fringe playoff teams. Losing to Dallas, but beating Boston in Boston is an incredible win, even though it's in December. Putting a beat down on Golden State is always fun. And you know, they lose to OKC, which happens. But after today, starting tomorrow, December 31st, it goes Phoenix, Sacramento, Golden State, Dallas, Houston, Minnesota, Houston, San Antonio twice, back-to-back, and then Minnesota. And then Charlotte, bit of a break there. New Orleans, iffy. Utah, iffy. And then at New York, and then Houston again.
That's not easy.
No, that's not easy for a fully healthy Grizz team. Okay? Like, but this was supposed to be the prove-it time for this Grizzlies team. If everyone was staying healthy, maybe 1 or 2 guys getting banged up because no one can play a full 82 anymore, this was the time to truly see what this iteration of the Grizzlies was made of. And it's not even Ja being reckless anymore. It's other players. Like, he hurt his hip because I can't remember who it was on the Lakers undercut him when he's going up for a lob. Should have been a foul. It was an incredibly dangerous play. And so he misses some time there. He comes back. He starts playing well again, balling again. and Daniel Tice throws his arm out on Ja as he's trying to fight over a screen. It's a moving screen. It's a foul. They even challenge it and lose the challenge. And he just gets hurt again. It's not like he's flying through the air and trying to dunk on dudes anymore. And he specifically said that he doesn't want to do that this year. He's trying to dunk less because he wants to preserve himself. He knows how valuable he is, and he will forego the viral highlights. And even then, he's still like the top three of views that the NBA shares on social media of what players are getting the most clicks. He's still top 3, top 5 in that, and he's barely dunking this year. And it's because he's doing other incredible things. It's just frustrating, man. It truly is. And people are pissed at Kleiman because he can't follow through with the trade, but he can't help it that another team swoops in with an offer and then the opposing GM decides to go with it. I was kind of gauging the interest on Twitter, and everyone was saying that the Grizzlies offer was better. That's what kind of like the general consensus. And NBA Twitter is a very fickle thing, and I don't necessarily trust it. With all my basketball analysis, the comments section. But for the most part, the NBA fandom agreed that the Grizzlies offer was the better offer. Most of them probably just look at the first round pick and see that. And they also think D'Lo is trash. So you think first round pick, D'Lo trash, you go with the first round pick, you take the expiring contract, and you get a dog in John Conchar. He's not going to give you too many points, but he's going to play. He's going to play hard. I think he can succeed on a team where he's not, the 13th guy on the roster. But I don't know, man. It's just story of my life here.
Well, I think it was very interesting how those sequence of events played out. You and I have talked about this off air in our Slack chat, but Kennard did have the right to veto any trade because he re-signed the 1-year deal with Memphis, meaning he would lose his bird rights. That's like a caveat. He would lose his bird rights if he was traded away, and so he had like a pseudo trade clause or pseudo like no trade clause that I don't think he would have played. I mean, unless he was bought out or something, which again, you lose your bird rights when something like that does happen anyway. I don't think he would have wanted to have played on a tanking Brooklyn team unless if there was like a third team that got in the mix there. And who's to say that there were conversations that were happening with teams around the league for Luke Kennard, because it's not like Luke Kennard's a bad player and that no one wants him. It's just that he kind of controls his own destiny in a sense.
Yeah.
The heavily protected first round, it was like what, 2020? It was next year, and it was like a top 17 or something like that. And so like I don't know what the implications were about if it didn't convey this year or whatever the case was, but it wouldn't have conveyed this year anyway. At least per the reporting, just based on how the protections were laid out. And so that's another thing where it's like, all right, how attractive would that be for a team like Brooklyn, who they want draft assets, and whether you mentioned the second round pick compensation, whatever that means. Was it just 1 second round pick, 2, whatever? I don't know. I don't think any of us know. But it is very interesting. Like, I do think on paper, a first round pick, Kennard, Conchar is the better offer. But then when you contextualize it in that way, it's like, all right, I can kind of see Brooklyn's line of thinking to a certain extent.
I can too, yeah.
Huh?
I said I can too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just don't like D'Angelo Russell, but he's on an expiring contract too.
Yeah.
So is Kennard, but again, kind of controls his own destiny. Not sure if he would have allowed that. Maybe he didn't or did already. I have no idea. Maxwell Lewis is like, I don't know what his contract is, but that's just like he was like a second round pick a couple of years ago. I think Conchar's better, but like I'm with you there. But then like the 3 second round picks, I wrote about this today for the in the trade grades post. Please go check that out at vendetta-sportsmedia.com. I think a couple of those second round picks, depending on how things play out with LA, could be valuable. Again, it's a second round pick, but you're talking about, somewhere it could be in the 30 to 40 range instead of being,
Mhm.
late second round.
Yeah.
Like Memphis would potentially be. Like it just based on like LeBron retiring, who knows what Davis's future is there,
Yeah.
this, that, the other. You never know what could happen. It obviously you're talking about something 4 or 5 years from now. And so a lot of things can actually happen between
Yeah.
now and then. But you're talking about a second round. I mean, heck, those second round picks may be moved for something else anyway at some point.
Yeah.
Brooklyn has a ton of them. They have 16 second round picks. They have 15 first round. Like they could trade a bunch of them away for whatever, 2, 3, 4 years from now. It may not
Mhm.
even matter. But at least they have that in the treasure chest instead of a first round pick that may or may not convey. Um, what is your like a couple two-parter question, like just thoughts on Finney Smith, what you like what Memphis needs and how he kind of would have fit in. And then where do you like what do you think about like the actual trade in terms of like the Lakers,
Yeah.
like the Lakers and Columbus?
Yeah. So Memphis, his fit, of course, is it's the 3-point shooting is big. Even though you're separating with Kennard, you're getting a much better defender than Luke Kennard. And I was explaining this to some people that are fans but aren't necessarily, like into the whole NBA. And it's like because I was talking to them about like, oh, like Memphis could be making this trade, and here's what the trade package is supposedly. And they're like, Luke Kennard, no, he's like one of our better 3-point shooters. He's like one of the best in the league. And I'm like, yeah, but you go from like here to like down here in 3-point shooting, but you go from down here to up all the way up here in terms of defense. And it's like that's what I want. That's what I want. And especially on the perimeter too. Is the Memphis has trouble defending the perimeter. I joke about it all the time. Whenever I went into the Grizzly spaces to discuss and talk, I don't do that anymore, and I'm glad I don't. There's some people that I respect and love and made friendships through that, but man, it's it's hell in that thing, and I can barely even listen to it sometimes anymore. It's crazy in that thing, but I would always sound like a broken record even on wins because teams were consistently having amazing record 3-point shooting nights against the Grizzlies. And it's because for as good of players that are on Memphis, they cannot defend the perimeter well. The Grizzlies are an interior defensive team. So having someone like Dorian Finney-Smith where you get that 3-point shooting that Memphis has historically not had, and having top shooters in Bane, which he's been a little off this year, he's been picking it back up, but it's probably going to dip some more now because of all the injuries and the heavier load he's going to have to carry for the next week or two. That, but then with the elevated perimeter defense, having a big wing that can guard other wings, so the KDs and the LeBrons of the NBA, the Tatums and Browns also, which is, when you're thinking of trying to win a championship, you're trying to think of not only shutting down like the Anthony Edwards and the Shays in the West, you got to think about the Tatums and the Browns in the East. Dorian Finney-Smith was that great fit for Memphis right there. And like I said, there's other options that I think Memphis could go out there and get, but Dorian Finney-Smith was at the top of my wish list for Memphis because I thought he would have fit perfectly in. I think now, especially with like all the injuries that Memphis has, you need someone that you can rely on that is showing that even though they're on a bad team, he's on a bad team. He's one of the top. He was one of the top scorers on the Nets and was a big reason why they won as many games as they did and why they were competitive early in the season and had like a decent record to start the year. And the Nets are like, we can't have this. Let's start shipping these guys out of here. They got Schroeder out of there. He was playing phenomenally, got him off to Golden State, and now sending Dorian Finney-Smith to the Lakers. Now, as far as it goes to the Lakers, I think the Lakers just have so many other problems. Like, it's a great pickup on paper, but it's like, what does this realistically do for LA in the immediate time frame? Like, they're fifth in the West, but only half a game separates them between being fifth in the West and then being a mid to low tier team in the play-in. And there's so many inconsistencies with them. They've had some great runs, but like it's probably gonna help. Knowing the Lakers and knowing LeBron, it's gonna help him in some way, shape, or form. And I'm sure Dorian Finney-Smith is gonna be fine with playing in a place like LA. I mean, as long as LeBron's there, and we don't. As far as everyone knows, he's going to play another year after this, and so we'll see with Dorian Finney-Smith and his player option. But I feel like the Lakers always get away with this. There's no other team in the league that gets away with this like the Lakers do, where they offer what feels like suboptimal packages. And it's like the Ryu Hachimura trade all over again. That actually did like rejuvenize that Lakers team when Hachimura came in. That's another guy I was very upset. And I was like, that's all it took to get Hachimura? But it's like, I don't know if it's Rob Pelinka. I don't know if like, is LeBron able to get these trades because some of these GMs were at those Diddy parties? And he's got blackmail on.
Oh no.
Like, is that what's going on right now? LeBron's blackmailing with Diddy videos to get these trades.
Oh jeez.
On his birthday too. Shout out to
you really did that on his birthday, man. I do find it interesting because you do mention Rui, and like I was thinking about this today. I was on the road for a little bit. Does this trade make like a guy like Rui, who's making 17 mil this year, 18.3 next year, it's the last year of his deal, like a guy like him more expendable, like in a trade package? Because again, they did retain their first round picks. I believe they have 2 that are tradable. I could be wrong with that on that front. But they do have multiple first round picks that they can trade ahead of the deadline. And so I wonder if you package a first and Rui and someone else for whatever, like it incentivizes a trade package in that sense. You're not losing your wing depth, like
Jimmy Butler.
Or even like, I mean, I know Laker fans have thrown Gabe Vincent, making 11 million. Jared Vanderbilt, who hasn't, I don't think, played this year because of an injury that he's dealt with, and he's been off injured most of his career. He's making 10.5 million. Like guys like that. I mean, again, like selling low on some of these players like Vincent. I mean, I know Vincent, I think, has been better lately, but he still hasn't really been that good at all this year. And Vanderbilt, again, who hasn't played, like selling low on them and trying to make a team talk themselves into that when these guys still have years left on their deals. Like, it's just not a pragmatic, realistic thing for most of these teams. But I would just wonder how much more expendable are some of these guys, especially Rui, because again, he's not playing terribly. 17 mil and then 18.3 next year. Like, that's not a terrible contract. And that's like something that you can get in terms of like a salary filler, in addition to, something else. If something comes about, or then that's something that you can reassess next season. But I do find that part of it somewhat interesting. Dorian Finney-Smith is more of like a floor raiser instead of a ceiling raiser, like especially for the Lakers. It doesn't feel like they're fifth in the West, but they've won, I think, 5 of their last 6 or something like that. Like, they're on a little bit of a hot stretch. Their defense this year has been a disaster. And I think he helps them a lot there. Their 3-point shooting still isn't where you want it to be. Like, they don't stay, even with the JJ Redick coming in the building, like, they still don't take or make many threes. But he definitely helps with that. But it's funny. It feels like every Laker fan, like, every time they get someone new, it's a good shooter or someone who has shot the ball well, and then once they get to LA, it just completely bottoms out or shit hits the fan or whatever the case is. And Dorian Finney-Smith is having by far the best shooting season of his career, and so maybe we will be sitting here in a couple weeks with egg on our face about him shooting 25% from three or
Yeah.
something like that after shooting 45% or nearly 45%
Yeah.
with the Nets. So I do find some of the parts of this interesting. They still do need a backup center. And
Mhm.
so I wonder again, depending on who's available, like I you hear the name Walker Kessler a lot. I don't
Yeah.
know how realistic that is. I saw a report earlier. I think it was Anthony Irwin who's like a Lakers insider for Clutch Points. I want to say I read somewhere on Twitter that there was like a holdup in those conversations just because like they like the Jazz own I think one or two future Laker picks in like
Yeah.
2027 and whatnot. And like they wouldn't completely bottom out once those picks like in 2027 like they wouldn't completely bottom out like they'd still be a decent team even if Braun retires if they trade them Walker Kessler. And so I think I want to say maybe I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but like conversations were I guess reportedly held up or whatever the word that was used because of that reason, which I find was interesting. Like it's like wait, we own a couple of your picks or one of your picks or
Oh yeah.
whatever, and you're going to be
That's such
better
a
than you were when we trade you this guys.
that
And so it's like I guess that kind of makes sense.
that's such a Danny Ainge thing too.
That is such a Danny
where
Ainge
where
thing,
he's
but
where he's one of the few guys that isn't like so like super short-sighted, where
right.
he understands the assets that he has, and he understands players and team building, and he's like
Right. And so I thought that was like I read that earlier today and I thought that was interesting and I don't know how true that is or untrue that is, but it was just something that I was just like, like not many organizations would think this way. Or maybe some do and I'm just being naive. Um I don't know like again Clint Capella was like a popular name in the offseason. I know um he's polarizing. He's on an expiring contract for like 22 million, 23 million, whatever it is. Like he can be an option. I don't know if there's a center like a young center like Nick Richards or somewhere in Charlotte or whatever. Like I don't know, but they do need a backup center. They do need some like more defensive infrastructure. They just don't have the personnel for it, and I think Dorian Finney-Smith does help them out. Does help them out a lot in that aspect.
yeah. You say Dorian Finney-Smith is a floor raiser for like the Lakers. I agree with that. And if this was any more that was like more competitive, then it's almost like it is a ceiling raiser if it's the right situation. Like he's that type of player, honestly. And like you said, maybe we do have egg on our face here in a month where he's just fallen off a cliff. He's only getting like 5 shots a game, and he's bricking every single one of them from three. Um, but it's a very interesting trade. He's an intriguing player. I've wanted him for so long, and it sucks. It sucks knowing what my team needs to get pushed over the edge and to be like so close to where everyone, including Nets insiders, are like, it's all but a done deal. There's just a few things that are needed, and who even knows too. And again, I'll finish up with this. Again, for people talking crap about Kleiman, like they say he hasn't built a championship roster. It's like, well, you don't know if you've built a championship roster until you win a championship. That's it's like Boston. For many years, people are like, oh, they have a championship roster. Well, they never won a title. They've made some great runs, made it to a finals, lost, but now they made it last year, and it was relatively a lot of the same players that were there the previous year. It was just Porzingis that was the big deal, and he was kind of hurt for a
Andrew.
chunk of the Andrew. True, that's true. That's a big one too. But I mean, well, your stars at least for the most part were still in place, and some of your bench guys in the draft were there. But anyway, the plot still stands.
Tillman. You
shout
got
out,
you gave him some
hey,
minutes.
hey, shout out Tillman, shout out Tillman. I'm happy he got a ring. I'm happy for him. Happy for any former Grizz that I like to succeed. But it's also very on par that when Memphis trades someone away, that they play incredibly well. Because Jay Crowder was one of those guys where it was like, man, he's not really doing much for us, and he got shipped off to Miami in the Justice Winslow trade.
Oh yeah, don't I remember that?
Yeah,
Him and Iggy and Solomon Hill.
yeah. And then
Because I
Iggy,
remember they almost got Miami almost got those three players, and then I think there was I don't remember what the other trade was, but they almost got Gallinari that same deadline from Oklahoma City. I
that's
think it was Oklahoma City,
he was OKC.
but yeah, no, it was like they almost got like a two like a bang bang, but it was just Iggy and Jay, and Jay was really good for him up until like the Eastern Conference Finals in the bubble
Yeah, yeah,
because he just couldn't like the. I mean, I know they Miami struggled a little bit out of the gate after that deadline, but like in the like Jay just wouldn't miss in the bubble. It was crazy.
I know. All right, so we'll move on kind of to like our final segment here. We've already, believe it or not, we've already yapped for an hour almost.
I do
Uh,
that a lot. So
I do too. Yeah, I feel bad for my students because you know I'll sit up there and I'll unintentionally lecture for like the entire time. Sometimes I have to really stop myself and give them like a minute or two breather at the end of class before the bell rings and before they move on, because there are times where it's like I look at my phone and it's like 30 seconds until the bell rings and I'm in the middle of a thought yapping, and it's like they've got to like shut down from history and move on to whatever their next class is. So I understand yapping. And then it's right after lunch too, so when they get settled in and the bell rings, I don't feel bad about just like hopping right in and going in because I've already got all my notes ready. Everything's prepped. Bell rings, butts are in seat. We're off running for 45 straight minutes. So the last thing we will talk about for this episode is I just wanted, Matt, for you to ask you, because the great thing about the NBA, especially the modern NBA, there is quite a lot of parody that is going on right now. Uh, some big surprises in the NBA, some not so big surprises. But basically, I'm trying to find a witty way to get to this question. I'm absolutely failing right now. But basically, in your opinion, do you have like one or two big surprises this year? They could be good surprises, like a team's doing great, this player's doing great, or the opposite, team sucks. This is terrible. This team's terrible. Whatever. What's kind of like your like the biggest thing that stands out for you so far as we're like halfway through being between a third and halfway done with the season?
I have a couple teams for this actually. I
Go
think
ahead.
the first team that I want to go to is the Clippers.
Okay.
Um, the Clippers are currently at the time of this pub. I think they're 18 and 13, something like
They
that.
they
Like
are
they've
now
been
19-13 because they came
19
back
and
against the
13.
Pelicans. So that game just closed up about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, they've been the fourth best defense in the West this year, and like that's the Jeff Van Gundy effect
Yeah.
because he's running their defense over there. And like
Mm-hmm.
heading into this year, especially after everything that happened in the offseason with Paul George leaving and then them signing, they pivoted, signed Derek Jones Jr., they signed Kevin Porter Jr., which I didn't understand at the time. I really still don't now. Not a good person, this,
Yeah.
that, the other. Um, I didn't think they would be good at all. Like I think I had them when we did our previews. I think I had like 13th seed in the
Yeah.
West, 14th. It was like really, really, really low. And like to me, they've looked connected, especially defensively without Kawhi Leonard. Like Kawhi Leonard hasn't played yet, and they're still,
Mm-hmm.
6 games above 500 in a really competitive conference. While being one of the best defensive teams in the league, like the only teams better than them defensively are Oklahoma City, Houston, and Orlando, and those teams have been awesome
Yeah.
defensively this year. And a couple of teams that they've been better than are like Minnesota, Boston, Cleveland. Like all those teams are also very good defensively. Memphis is right there too in
Mm-hmm.
that mix. Um, so that's been a team that's definitely surprised me. Norman Powell has been incredible.
Yeah.
Um, Zubac in certain points has been incredible. Harden, I think, he doesn't need to do as much some nights because of Powell and Zubac, like whatever the case is, but like he can still give you like something. Like obviously he's not the same. He's not the explosive stuff. I'm not that he was ever explosive, but like he doesn't have the same
Mm-hmm.
burst as he did
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 years ago off the dribble, and that's kind of hindered some of what he can actually do on a basketball court. But he's still like he's solid. And they just have guys that'll go in and contribute on a night to
Yeah.
night basis,
Yeah.
like a guy like Chris Dunn.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll let you in here. Um, so they won 116, 113, and I get it. This is against the 5 and now 28 New Orleans Pelicans, and they are severely injured as well. Um, which I mean, still to only have 5 wins is crazy. But the lead scorer tonight was Norman Powell,
Norman Powell, 35.
35, 13 of 27 from the field. James Harden had a great night tonight. Shout out Chickster, that's his favorite player. 5 of 10 from 3, 27 points. Zubac, 20 points, 16 boards, very close to a 20-20 double-double. And then Derrick Jones Jr., solid
Derek,
night,
yeah.
11 points. And Chris Dunn, a pretty productive night, 7 points, but 6 assists. It's not bad from your point guard. Not bad from your point guard. Mo Bamba's on the Clippers. I remember that because the Grizzlies played them very recently, and this was when the Grizzlies were still fairly healthy, and the Clippers broke up their big win streak that they were on, and the commentators for Memphis, they were talking about kind of like the casual fans, because that's the vast majority of like every fan base. I feel like we're trying to explain on the broadcast. It's like, no, you people do not understand. This is probably going to be the best defensive team that Memphis plays all year. In terms of like team defense, like, someone like the OKC in Houston, they have guys with great reputations for playing defense. The Clippers have that in a guy, but he's not playing right now in Kawhi Leonard. These are a lot of role players that collectively are playing fantastic defense. Nick Batum still being in the NBA is crazy, by the way. Just a kind of a side tangent there. Him and Taj Gibson somehow continue to find life in the NBA. And Taj Gibson's not, didn't even play with, is Taj still in the league right now?
Yeah,
Isn't
he's
he?
with I think it was with Charlotte.
Yeah. He's not even with Thibodeau.
Which is crazy how he's getting. I think there was a couple instances earlier in the season when Mark Williams was hurt. And a couple other guys were hurt. Like he was starting for them, and it's just like that feels rude to some extent. Starting Taj Gibson at that age, like giving him that many minutes, like that just feels rude on his legs.
It is elder abuse.
Yeah, like come on, like you couldn't have someone else. I mean, I know you can only have so many bigs on your roster, but at the same time, man, like because Nick Richards has been banged up. Mark was banged up for a bit. Mark has also been awesome lately. Who was a surprise for you? There's one other team that I want to stick with too if you don't take them. But
yeah, let me bring back up. I was trying to think about this earlier. The Clippers were really the one I was looking at. Minnesota is kind of a big one for me. Just kind of like it feels like a step back, like a big step back. I think they doubled down on the wrong big. I have my issues with Cat, but if you were to say, here's your two choices in the year of our Lord 2024, which is fixing the past, and we will move into the year of our Lord 2025, NBA style of play, do you want someone that is more of a traditional big, a great defender, a 2-3-time defensive player of the year, and is solid, not really offensively, but defensively is great? Or do you want a guy that is about just as big, kind of can be a softie sometimes, depending on who he's playing, especially if it's a much bigger player like DeMarcus Cousins, very, very famous photo. Put it in the Louvre. Put it in the Professional Basketball Hall of Fame, that picture. Fantastic, timeless. But can play defense, but also has a lot of offensive prowess, especially in stretching the floor. He can hit threes at a consistent basis. 99.999% of basketball watchers, doesn't matter if you are a casual or if you are, heavily into basketball and basketball is your life, everyone's going to choose Karl Anthony Towns. And even, like I said, I have my issues. I think he's one of the goofiest players in the NBA. I don't think he got enough crap during the playoff series against Memphis, where he like goes between the legs, like he's not even bouncing the ball, he just goes around his legs like 5 times and then takes like 4 steps before dribbling the basketball
Yeah, I
and gets
remember
called
that.
for a walk. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, please, can this be a viral clip? And no one talks about it afterwards. I was like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever seen live in person on a basketball court. And he's sitting there like trying to be fancy and look cool and like shushing the crowd and everything. Hilarious. And then like changing his voice, trying to make himself sound deeper because he was like getting made fun of for like previous
You're
interviews,
right.
so he's
Yeah.
trying to deepen his voice. Despite all those problems, I'm like, they doubled down on the wrong guy. They doubled down on Rudy
Right.
Gobert. They shouldn't have traded for him in the first place, because as great of a three-point shooter as Ant is, he is extremely dangerous when attacking the paint, attacking the rim, and
Yep.
they doubled clogged it. Even though Cat can stretch the floor, you
Yep.
don't want Cat to live out there because he can dominate inside too. You want him playing in and out. You don't want him just running around the 3-point lane, because Memphis was able to force him to do that later in that playoff series, and Kyle Anderson was guarding him and shutting
Yep.
him down in those last couple games leading up to the elimination game where Memphis finally moved on and won. I just don't understand what's going on up there in Minnesota. I mean, they're winning a few games, but they're 8th in the West right now. And when you think of Minnesota, someone that many people had as like a top 4, top 3 team in the West, there's barely anything separating them between a Golden State team that is a shell of its former self and an overachieving Spurs team that's riding the very lengthy back of Victor Wembanyama right now.
Right.
So my pick is the Timberwolves.
There's a couple other teams that I want to highlight here just quickly as we go through this. New Orleans is one.
Oh,
I was thought like if you go back and look at the preview, I was very like I just was not in on this team at all. But and my reason was because I just didn't know what the fit between DeJounte, Ingram, Zion, like McCollum, like that fit to me was just it just felt weird.
mm-hmm.
Not bad players, just felt weird, but they've been ravaged by injuries this entire year. They're now 5-28. Um, and I mean, Eve Meese, like he was a guy that I was high on pre-draft. Go check out the profile
Mm-hmm.
at sportsmedia.com. Please go check out all of our stuff there, as we'll say many times.
100%.
He was a guy that I liked a lot. Coming out of Baylor, like he was very raw, but his motor was 12 out of 10 every single time that he was on the floor. He improved a lot just in his one season at Baylor. Good shot blocker, good vertical spacer. Like he's a dude like he had like a legit like rim runner, very high energy, very good rebounder, better ball handler and passer than he gets credit for. Maybe not ball handler, but like better with the ball in his hands than he gets credit for sometimes. But like you knew he only been playing basketball for a few years and he's like 18, 19 years old. Very good measurables, can jump out of the gym. Like he was a guy that I liked a lot, and he's done nothing but vindicate that.
Yeah.
Um, albeit with all the opportunity that he's gotten. I know he came in as the backup. They didn't really have a starting center beginning of the season. Willie Green was like, Herb Jones is going to be our starting center. It's just like, that doesn't feel like a good idea at all. But they've been ravaged by injury. Let me just scroll up in here. I want to give Atlanta some flowers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jalen Johnson's really, 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 really good. Like that dude can like he showed it last year too. But now with DeJounte out the door and him being kind of that second field next to Trey, like Jalen Johnson's really freaking good. Dyson Daniels has been otherworldly defensively for them, just with how many deflections he creates. I wonder if he's still on that historic trajectory that he was on at the beginning of the season, which is creating like deflections, getting blocks, steals, whatever the case was. I thought he's a seamless fit next to Trey, just based on what he can do defensively, and they hit a home run with that trade. Sacramento.
Oh yeah.
Jesus Christ. they've been a mess the last 2-3 weeks. It didn't help. No, firing Mike Brown wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
I know the coach is the first one to fall on the axe all the time. That's just how it is in professional sports, whether it's their fault or not. Um, it was not his fault. And just like every team goes through struggles throughout a season. Yeah, they did lose or 12 of 17, whatever it was. Um, but it wasn't his fault. Like the fact that they fired him after he was holding his best player, his star
Yeah.
player, accountable. Bad optics for the organization.
Oh
Don't give
yeah.
a shit what Fox's role with that was. Just terrible optics. It's the Kings being the Kings that we all know and love. They just gave him an extension. 3 years, 30 million. They just gave him an extension. And yet they fired him months into that extension because of whatever the heck. And then there was a report that came out today that no one wanted to fire him and that they were exploring trades before they fired him. And it's just like, does anyone have any idea what's going on there? Like, obviously, one, someone wanted him fired, and two, why is it being leaked that they were seeking trades before firing? Like, what's the
Yeah.
upside of
Yeah.
that?
And I just double checked it
Among other
to
things.
make sure. And yeah, he is a very recent coach of the year.
The only
Unanimous.
unanimous coach of the year in NBA history, I believe. The only one. That was 2 years ago.
Yeah. And just bad organizations are just going to be bad organizations.
Correct.
And there's just
Correct.
nothing about it. Like Mike Brown is a good coach. He's going to get on some team probably in 2 years or so, 2 3 years.
It could be literally next season.
It could be next season.
It could be
And
like this season. If a team has an open available spot, it's like a consultant or whatever. Like that, there's no way that dude should be out of a job. And the fact
no.
that he is out of a job because of whatever the heck they were struggling for a little bit is crazy. And like again, the roster isn't great. I understand that. I wouldn't have made the DeMar DeRozan trade. There probably is some other moves, some other players that I wouldn't have wanted there that are there, but like that's not the point. The point is they fired him for whatever the heck, and just the way they did it and why, like the timing of it was just so optically bad. And it was just again, that's how to your point, that's how bad organizations stay bad organizations. There was another team that I want to
Yeah.
highlight on here
And
really quick.
I'll just say one more thing. It's not like they're too far out of the play-in anyways.
Yeah, I mean they have some ground to make up,
I
but
mean,
you're
yeah, they're 3 games back. 3 games back. That's not bad.
yeah.
That's doable. It's doable. Now, do they have the roster for it? I don't know. That's the question there, but
Right.
that's not Mike Brown's doing. That's a front office thing. It's just like I don't know, man. Seeing poorly run organizations makes me angry.
Right.
I mean, I've never ran a professional franchise, but I feel like if I have a coach like Mike Brown, I'm gonna lean
Right.
on him some, you know?
He's the one dude in that building holding dudes accountable, and he does it shit every single year, and he's done it all the time. Like if you watch his pressers, like he's just going breakdown after breakdown of like what happened,
Oh,
what
I
went
know,
wrong. Like
dude. Like the
obviously, like yeah, you have to fix that at some point, sure, and maybe that was the line that was drawn in the sand. But at the same time, it's just like he's the one dude in the building who's like holding dudes accountable consistently. At least that's what it feels like
I
from
don't
the outside looking in.
the videos of practices from 2 years ago were going viral because it was a young Kings team, and
Right.
he's all up in their grill.
Yeah,
Like,
I remember the Malik Monk one where he's just like, Malik, I'm gonna lose my effing top. I don't remember what it was, but he's just like, I'm gonna lose my top. Just like, and it's just like, yeah, that's how you hold you. Like, again, I don't want to say this as a fan with the team or with a lot of organizational stability, but like, yeah, not every day at practice is gonna be good. Yes, sometimes your coach is
yeah,
gonna cuss the hell out. Like that's just coaching in general. You have to. Eric Spoelstra said it in reaction to the firing. Like, yeah, everyone's got to go through adversity together when you're going through adversity.
mm,
That's just you got it again. It's hard to win in this league. It's really hard to win in this league, and especially when you're in a team. When you're a team like the Kings, like, yeah, not the greatest roster in the world. It's passable, but you're in a very competitive conference. Like, yeah, it's gonna be hard. Winning is hard for everyone in this
Mm-hmm.
like even for Oklahoma City on some nights. Some nights they might beat Memphis by 24, whatever it was. Sorry. But it also
Dude,
there could be some
Cam
nights where
Spencer had like 15 minutes that night, man. It's okay. John Conjure was starting at power forward. Like, I was just I was more concerned that they were going to see it as an opportunity to get back from Memphis for a couple years ago when we beat them by 70 when most of their starters were out.
right, yeah.
So thankfully that didn't happen.
Um Also shout out Cam Spencer, man. He was dominating with the hustle.
Oh yeah, dude.
At like
No,
55 or
I'm at,
whatever.
yeah, no,
He's
I'm
awesome.
excited.
He's awesome.
I'm excited to when he can. There will be a roster spot carved out for him in the future, and he's gonna be Hooper.
The only issue with him is he can barely jump over a piece of paper.
Well, he's
Um
a shooter, so you know what?
yeah.
You only got to jump like that high anyway to
Hey,
shoot a
listen, you
basketball.
got to make sure you get enough lift to get that ball
Yeah.
over the top. Um and then the other team I want to point out here was Philadelphia.
Oh yeah.
They've been better lately, but Buddy was at a bad start.
Yeah. That was
Injuries, sure. Punching reporters, whatever the heck that was, or shoving reporters.
yeah.
That's not a great look. Um, Again, I would have. That's not a great look, but again, once you contextualize why he did it, not going to blame him for it.
Yeah.
But just again, like the team meeting, Maxi holding Embiid accountable, it just wasn't like the prettiest of starts. Again, sometimes you need that as a team, especially
Mhm.
when they had an entirely new team pretty much.
Yeah.
And that was another team that I was just very, very down on.
I think most of us.
Again,
Most of
12
us were.
set like 12 and 17. They've been better lately. Still not great. They've been disappointing though. And
Yeah,
then
they've been injured too. Yeah.
Cleveland, I think's like another one that like I thought Cleveland was going to be good because Atkinson's better than JB Bickerstaff,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's just better
Yeah.
structure with what he does.
I couldn't believe
But
Atkinson went.
no one could have guessed 27.
No, I couldn't believe Atkinson went so long without a head coaching job. For the job that he was doing in Brooklyn, for him to get fired when KD rolls into town, KD and James Harden roll into town, and for him to be an assistant for as long as he was, I thought
Yeah.
was criminal, honestly.
Well, he did take that job in Charlotte a couple years ago.
Very
then, like,
briefly.
later. Yeah, very briefly, and then he's just like, actually, I don't. This team stinks.
Yeah. Look,
I'm not going to do that.
I can't blame him.
Neither can I.
Listen, man, bad organizations are just going to be bad organizations. Stay away from them.
He slept on it a couple nights, and he's just like, actually, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, don't want to do this. And again, all the power to him, man.
Yeah, no, he walks into a much better situation in Cleveland.
Right. So yeah, those are just a couple teams that I want to point out. I'm sure we're missing a couple here and there that people in the comments.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Who work with us are gonna get mad at us.
I guess we could point out the Magic, the fact that they're missing their two best players and are still playing competitive basketball.
I've long been a fan of Jamal Mosley. He's so good. Just like the offense this entire time there is stunk. But like just how he's gotten guys to buy in defensively every single year, no matter what the circumstances are, and the kind of organizational structure that they have and what they're building there. I'm a huge again. I dislike that they're the best team in Florida now. Not that I've ever cared about the Magic because I don't, but the fact that we had to relinquish that title kind of just stinks in and of itself.
I feel that.
But I'm a huge fan of what they're doing over there. I just wonder how they're going to continue to put that together as time goes on. Like they've made moves to get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They got De Silva in the draft, who's been good in limited opportunity, who I was a huge fan of pre-draft. That was my guy pre-draft. And just doing it without their two best players who have the same injury, which is kind of weird. I know Paulo, I think, is going to be returning back soon, but I love everything that they're doing there, and the fact that they're still winning games is pretty crazy.
That is Vendetta's team. Orlando
Yeah,
is. We are all high on Orlando. I
yeah.
I was probably higher than what I should have been a few years ago when they got Palo, but now there's
Yeah.
vindication, and all of us at Vendetta, we've kind of adopted them as our team because we were all very high on Orlando coming in. In fact,
Yeah.
I think most of us kind of agreed. Was it you that had kind of like the hot take of them making the Eastern Conference Finals? And we were all
I
like,
think
yeah,
yeah, I had them making the East Finals because I had them as a 3 seed,
yeah.
like
And
preseason.
we were, and I think everyone that watches and discusses basketball here at the site was like, yeah, that's a great pick.
Well, I remember this because I will shout out the Don Trey Daubert for this. But when I was doing my over unders for like very early, like I'm a degenerate gambler.
Yeah.
That's just I can live with that at this point. I was I listed like a few over unders that I've already bet in the like in our Slack chat, and he was
Mhm.
like, all right, he's like Orlando over 47.5 or whatever the number was.
Mhm.
And I didn't have that one. I didn't look at it.
Yeah.
And I thought about it. And I was just like, you know what, I'll talk myself into that. And then like I was like, I really talked myself into it like a few weeks down the line. I was
Yeah.
having him laddered 50, 55, like all that stuff. And I
Uh,
so like I'll give him credit for that for at least getting me on that train a little bit. But I was already high on them. I just didn't know if like 48 was a realistic number. But then I looked at it a little bit deeper and I was just like, you know what, I really, really like this team. Like I really, really like this team. And so that's kind of where it was birthed. So I will credit
mhm.
our very own
Shout
the
out.
Don, the man, the myth, the legend, Trey Daubert for that.
Shout out to the Don. Have you done your end of the year review yet?
Yeah, I did that like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Okay, I did mine this morning. So right,
Uh,
right at the end. Right at the end. I'm a busy guy, man.
yeah.
Kids, traveling, just living the American dream, baby.
Oh yeah. No, I was just like, man, for me, it's always like I'm a bad procrastinator sometimes. I
I can
will
be
admit
too.
that.
I can be
And so
too.
like for me, it's just like getting it done. And so I was just like, yeah, I was like really not stressing, but I was like, yeah, I just wanted to get this done. And he was like, yeah, you're like the only person that's done it so far, or like one of the only people that does it. It's like, hey, at least I'm getting it done early, or earlier than I thought, because I thought everyone else was going to be doing theirs around the same time I was. And he's like, no, you were one of the only people that's done it so far. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I like usually getting mine done early, but I'm trying to adjust my mic right now. This setup, man, it's whack. My daughter, when she finally got old enough to be put in a room and sleep there, took over what was my office. So I'm on a tiny desk in a tiny corner of my bedroom. And this desk, I won't complain because I got it for free and it fits perfectly right here. It doesn't have enough space really for my boom mic to set right there. And I don't have space up here. And there's unfortunately nowhere on the walls to hang it and have it come down
Right.
without doing some crazy jerry rigging. So I just, I'll just deal with it as it goes. I guess the last point that I can make on, surprises, could we congratulate the Pistons and the Bulls for clawing their way to nearly 500 and being, as of right now, in the play-in spots? Last two play-in spots?
Yeah. Yeah. No, like in Chicago, it's very funny how they get rid of DeMar DeRozan and they all of a sudden become the fastest paced team in the entire league. Like they're just running team, like they're going like that
Yeah.
every time down the floor. Um, so I think that's like kind of funny in and of itself. I think it's benefited Vucevic, Levine, who's had a very good year, Lonzo
Mm-hmm.
Ball. Good to see him playing
Yeah.
basketball again.
Yeah.
Um, Kobe White, who had a really really good year last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's benefited all those guys a lot to a certain extent instead of playing at that kind of slow, matriculate pace. And then Detroit's so much fun to watch. Like just from like a star, I love watching a star. His athleticism. I think
Mm-hmm.
Cade's taking leaps and bounds as a player.
Yeah.
Um, Duran may not be the best defender in the world, but he's just someone I like watching a lot just because of how athletic he is. He's just a big, big body. Um, and then they have dudes over there like Tobias, who I mean Tobias Harris will do Tobias Harris things some nights. Malik Beasley's like super ignitable. He can make 4 threes just like that. On any given night, like they have some dudes over there like that are just I like watching play basketball. Um, Not the best team in the world, no
No,
question about it.
no, no.
They're still young, they're still improving. Fontecchio is another one that like they got him at the deadline last year from Utah. And at the time I was like, why Detroit? Because I want him to go into contending team, not Detroit. And he's been like good in moments for them. They're just a feisty out every night, and I say that as a fan of a team who it's just such a pain in the like every single game against Detroit, super close. They're going into like overtime, double overtime.
Yeah.
Again, our coach lost the game because he called a timeout. Um, the best coach in the league, yeah,
Yeah.
makes mistakes from time to time. That's just how it
It
happens
happens,
sometimes.
man.
Yeah, but no, I like what JB's doing over there. I know JB caught a little bit of a bad rap for what like the end of his Cleveland tenure, but I think he's a good coach, and um, I think he's done good work over there so far.
Yep. Well, Matt, you got any last words? Anything for the podcast? Could be on a
Um,
subject, promotion, whatever.
I'm just glad we're in the thick of it.
Oh
Uh,
Lord.
I'm glad we're in the thick of it, man. Glad hoops is back. Glad hoop. We got a lot of good hoops on every single night.
Oh yeah.
Regardless if it's the NBA, whether it's college.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm due. This is the earliest I've started doing pre-draft this year. I've done a decent amount so far. Probably not as much as I want to, but this next draft class is gonna be loaded. Let me just tell you that.
Oh, dude.
It's gonna be
I know.
loaded.
Which again, I understand why Memphis is so wanted
Yeah.
so many protections on that pick because shoot, you could get a dude 27, 28 deeper. Find another Jalen Wells in the late 40s.
Memphis does a good job with their scouting department. So,
They do. Now, give them a top 10 pick, they may struggle with it. It's ladder. It's pick 30 and beyond. Desmond Bain, Salty Aldama pick 30, and then numerous other guys in the second round. That's what makes up most of the team. So, but anyway, Matt, thank you for joining us. I know it's been a couple weeks since we got the last episode out. I'm where I'm at in life, and just because it's the NBA, it's hard to come up with talking points, it feels like, without sounding like some of the other podcasts and talking shows out there that just make up random crap that's not even like going on in the NBA, or they like try to throw it and it's like, hey, look at this, and it's like, no, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard anyone mention in the history of all conversations of basketball. And it feels like there's a new crown for that every single week because of all the talk shows. So I kind of like this format, at least right now where I'm at in life. Maybe when we get to the office, yeah, it's a weekly ordeal when we're able to focus 100% on it. But getting this out every few weeks, couple episodes in a season, I'm happy to do that and excited for the playoffs to come around. I know it's crazy already talking playoffs this early, but I'm a sucker for good sports, for good ball, good hoops, and that's where it's like we're getting good hoops now, but it's like that's where it's going to be the best hoops, and it's like just up in your face the whole time for that month and a half that the playoffs and to the finals are going, and it's the best thing to watch, and then it's depression for the next couple months. But anyway, guys, thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so you could be notified whenever a new episode drops or any of the numerous other content that we have going on over here at Vendetta Sports Media. My name is Jackson Law. That is Matt Hanifan, and we will see you guys next time.